I'm Leah, 34, and I always thought family meant unconditional support. That belief shattered when I discovered my parents had been secretly paying for my sister Rachel's children's private education, sports camps, and even setting up college funds, all while refusing to help with my dying husband's medical expenses. "We just don't have the money," they'd told me repeatedly as I watched Michael waste away, drowning in medical debt. Yesterday, I found the evidence on my father's computer. Spreadsheets tracking over $250,000 they've given Rachel over 5 years. The confrontation that followed has torn our family apart forever. Before I continue with this heartbreaking story, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. The support from this community has been my lifeline through these dark times. If my story of family betrayal resonates with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to join our growing family here, one that actually stands by each other through thick and thin. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. Growing up in suburban Denver, our family appeared picture perfect from the outside. My parents, Thomas and Elaine, were respected community members, dad an accountant, mom a former teacher who became a full-time homemaker when we were born. Rachel came first, 3 years before me, and from my earliest memories, there was an unspoken hierarchy in our household that I never quite understood until recently. Rachel was the golden child, beautiful, socially adept, and charismatic. She excelled at sports, particularly tennis and swimming, and though her grades were average, my parents celebrated her every achievement with dinners out and lavish gifts. I was quieter, more academic, and preferred books to social gatherings. My straight A's were expected rather than celebrated. When I won the state science competition in 8th grade, my parents attended but left early because Rachel had a tennis match the same day. They missed my award ceremony. "That's just how it is," I'd tell myself. "Rachel needs more attention." I became the peacekeeper, the one who understood, the one who adjusted. This pattern continued through high school and beyond. When Rachel wanted to attend an expensive private college, despite her mediocre grades, my parents found a way. When I received a partial scholarship to a prestigious university, they explained they couldn't help with the remainder, so I attended state college on loans that I paid off myself. After college, Rachel married Bradley, a charming investment banker whose family had old money. My parents were ecstatic, throwing them an extravagant wedding that cost nearly $50,000. 2 years later, when I married Michael, a dedicated elementary school teacher with a heart of gold, we received $5,000 toward our modest ceremony. "We're just not in the same financial position now," they explained. I accepted their explanation, never wanting to seem ungrateful. Rachel and Bradley quickly had 3 children, twins Sophia and Samuel, now 8, and Ethan, 6. They lived in a sprawling house in an exclusive neighborhood, drove luxury cars, and took lavish vacations. My parents doted on their grandchildren, attending every recital, game, and school event. They'd regularly watch the kids overnight so Rachel and Bradley could have couple time, something they never offered when Michael and I asked occasionally. Michael and I built a modest but happy life. We bought a small 3-bedroom home in a good school district, hoping to fill those rooms with children someday. I became a research scientist at a biotech company, and Michael continued teaching, passionate about shaping young minds. We lived within our means and saved diligently for our future. When Bradley's investment firm collapsed amid allegations of fraudulent practices 5 years ago, Rachel and Bradley maintained their lifestyle despite his significant income reduction. They kept the children in private school, continued their country club membership, and still took luxury vacations. I wondered how they managed, but never pried family finances weren't something we discussed openly. At family gatherings, subtle disparities continued. My parents would bring special gifts for Rachel's children, but only cards for our anniversaries or birthdays. When Rachel complained about the cost of the children's activities, my parents would immediately offer to chip in. When I mentioned struggling with student loan payments early in my career, they suggested I budget better or find a higher-paying job. The patterns were there, but I explained them away. Rachel had 3 children to support. We had none. Rachel had experienced a financial setback when Bradley's firm collapsed. We were stable. Rachel was their firstborn, Perhaps that created a special bond. I made excuses because the alternative that they simply valued her more was too painful to acknowledge. Despite everything, we maintained cordial relationships. Sunday dinners at my parents' home were a tradition, with Rachel's family joining monthly when their busy schedule allowed. Michael became the favorite uncle, always bringing small, thoughtful gifts for the children and spending hours playing with them. He genuinely loved those kids, regardless of how their parents or grandparents treated us. Family is complicated, Michael would say, when I occasionally voiced frustration about the imbalance. Your parents are good people who sometimes make questionable choices. Don't let it poison your heart. His perspective kept me grounded, helped me maintain relationships that might otherwise have fractured years earlier. Little did I know how prophetic his warning about poisoned hearts would become. 3 years ago, our world collapsed when Michael was diagnosed with a rare form of pancreatic cancer. It began with persistent back pain and digestive issues that he attributed to stress from teaching. When jaundice developed, we knew something was seriously wrong. The diagnosis came after an extensive series of tests. Stage 3 pancreatic adenocarcinoma, with an unusual genetic profile that made it particularly aggressive. The oncologist was cautiously optimistic because of Michael's age, 36, and otherwise excellent health. He recommended an aggressive treatment plan, surgery followed by experimental immunotherapy that showed promising results for Michael's specific cancer subtype. Our insurance covered the standard treatments but classified the immunotherapy as experimental, denying coverage for the $15,000 monthly treatment. We'll find a way, Michael said, eternally optimistic, even facing mortality. We immediately adjusted our lives, canceling travel plans, cutting all unnecessary expenses, and researching every financial assistance program available. I took family leave from work to care for him through the surgery and initial recovery, burning through our modest savings far faster than anticipated. The surgery was partially successful, removing the primary tumor but revealing concerning spread to nearby lymph nodes. The immunotherapy became not just recommended but essential for his survival. When we exhausted our savings after just 3 months of treatment, I returned to work part-time while continuing as Michael's primary caregiver. This was when I first approached my parents for help. I'd never asked them for financial assistance as an adult, priding myself on my independence. But watching Michael suffer while knowing a treatment existed that we couldn't afford broke that pride. I invited them to dinner at our home, explained the situation in detail, and asked if they could help with the immunotherapy costs, even temporarily. We just don't have that kind of money available, my father said, looking genuinely pained. We're approaching retirement age, and our investments haven't performed as expected. My mother added, we can give you $5,000 to help with regular expenses, but anything more would jeopardize our financial security. I accepted their explanation and the check, grateful for any assistance. The $5,000 covered less than 2 weeks of Michael's treatments. When I called Rachel to update her on Michael's condition, she expressed sympathy but offered no tangible help. That's so terrible, sis. Bradley and I are a bit overextended right now with the kids' tuition and activities, but we're sending positive thoughts your way. Let me know if you need me to bring over a casserole sometime. As Michael's condition worsened, so did our financial situation. I reduced to quarter time at work, sacrificing income to be with him for treatments and manage his increasingly complex care needs. We made the heartbreaking decision to sell our home, moving to a small 2-bedroom apartment to free up equity for medical expenses. Every piece of furniture we sold, every possession we parted with, felt like losing another piece of the future we'd planned together. Meanwhile, family gatherings continued, though we attended less frequently due to Michael's health. At Thanksgiving that year, Rachel arrived in a brand new Range Rover. Bradley insisted, she explained. He says the kids need a safe vehicle. That same evening, she complained about the cost of the twins' horse riding lessons and summer sailing camp. Dad, can you help with the deposit for sailing camp? It's due next week, and it's $4,800 per child, she asked casually over dessert. Send me the details, my father replied without hesitation. I felt Michael's hand squeeze mine under the table. silently urging me not to react. Later that night, as I helped him manage the nausea from his latest treatment, I finally verbalized my frustration. How can they afford to help with expensive summer camps but not life-saving treatment? It doesn't make sense. Michael, despite his discomfort, remained characteristically wise. People have complicated relationships with money. Maybe they don't truly understand how serious this is. Maybe helping with fun things for the grandkids feels better than confronting mortality by helping with cancer treatment. His compassion humbled me, and I resolved to try again with a more direct approach. I scheduled lunch with just my parents, brought all of Michael's medical records and financial statements, and laid everything bare. The doctors give him a 60% chance of surviving 5 years with this treatment. Without it, less than 10%, I explained, showing them the oncologist's reports. We've sold our house, cashed out retirement accounts, and maxed out credit cards. I'm working as much as I can while caring for him, but we're drowning. Please, can you help us save Michael's life? They listened attentively, expressions grave. My mother wiped away tears. My father reviewed the financial documents thoroughly, asking detailed questions about insurance appeals and assistance programs. I felt hopeful for the first time in months. We'll discuss this and see what we can do, he finally said, embracing me as we parted. A week later, they called to say they could provide another $10,000, but nothing more. It's all we can spare right now without jeopardizing our security, my father explained. I thanked them profusely while doing the mental math. Another month of treatment covered. But what then? The pattern continued for 2 more years. Michael's cancer would appear to retreat, giving us hope, then return more aggressively. Each recurrence required more intensive and expensive interventions. Each time, I'd approach my parents, and each time, they'd provide small amounts that helped but fell far short of what was needed. We organized fundraisers among friends, applied for charitable assistance, and I even picked up remote research consulting work that I could do from hospital rooms during Michael's treatments. Throughout this period, my parents continued their Sunday dinner tradition. Rachel's children still received lavish birthday and Christmas gifts. They still attended private school and expensive summer camps. But now, I noticed my mother would quickly change the subject whenever Rachel mentioned financial assistance from them, glancing nervously in my direction. Deep down, I began to suspect there was more to the story than my parents were telling me, but with Michael's health deteriorating, I had neither the energy nor the emotional capacity to investigate further. Last month, my father called asking for help with a computer problem. He'd been trying to update some financial software and kept receiving error messages. Since I was waiting for Michael to complete a treatment session with his home health nurse, I told Dad I could stop by that afternoon. When I arrived, my father was on a phone call that was running long, so my mother suggested I go ahead and work on the computer in his home office. "You know where everything is," he said, "just log in with the usual password." The usual password was a family joke. My father had used the same password for everything for 20 years, despite all of us telling him it was insecure. Our old house number, followed by my mother's birthday. I logged in and found the financial software he was struggling with. As I worked to fix the compatibility issue, I needed to find some recent transaction files to test the import function. Flicking through his meticulously organized file system, I opened a folder labeled Family Financial Records. Inside were subfolders for insurance, taxes, investments, and what caught my eye, Rachel's support and Leah's support. My heart began racing. I shouldn't look, I told myself. These were private records. But something compelled me to click on Rachel's support, where I found detailed Excel spreadsheets tracking payments made to or on behalf of my sister from 2018 to the present. Monthly transfers of $2,500 directly to her personal account under the label Household Supplement. Tuition payments to Westridge Academy, $35,000 annually per child. Summer program fees ranging from $8,000 to $12,000 per child each year. A college fund receiving $10,000 annually per child. Payments for family vacations to Hawaii, Europe, and the Caribbean, ranging from $15,000 to $20,000 per year. The total at the bottom of the most recent annual summary: $259,430 for the previous calendar year alone, multiplied across 5 years, over $1.2 million. With trembling hands, I clicked on Leah's support. The folder contained a single spreadsheet with 2 entries: $5,000 given when Michael was first diagnosed, and $10,000 given 18 months ago. Total, $15,000. The disparity was so stark, so absolute, that I felt physically ill. While Michael had been fighting for his life and we'd been selling our possessions to pay for his treatments, my parents had given Rachel over $250,000 annually for private school, luxury vacations, and spending money. I heard my father ending his call in the living room and quickly took photos of the spreadsheets with my phone. I closed the files, fixed the software issue as promised, and somehow maintained my composure when my father returned to the office. "All fixed," I managed to say. "It was just a compatibility issue with the latest update." "You're a lifesaver," he said, oblivious to my internal turmoil. "Can you stay for dinner? Your mother's making lasagna." "I need to get back to Michael," I replied, which was true, but not the reason I couldn't bear to stay another minute in that house. I drove around for nearly an hour before returning home, trying to process what I'd discovered. Had they been lying to me all along about their financial situation? Did they truly believe Rachel's children's sailing camp was more important than Michael's life? Was there any possible explanation that wouldn't destroy what remained of my faith in my family? When I finally returned home, Michael was resting comfortably after his treatment. I sat in our small kitchen, reviewing the photos I'd taken, searching for some detail I might have misinterpreted. But the numbers were clear, the disparity undeniable. While claiming financial limitations, my parents had given Rachel over 80 times what they'd given us during the same period. That night, after ensuring Michael was asleep, I did more investigating. I logged into my parents' shared email account. Yes, they shared an email for family communications. Another security practice we'd tried to discourage, and searched for correspondence with Rachel about money. What I found confirmed everything. Monthly check-ins about whether the support payment had arrived. Discussions about upcoming tuition and activity payments. Even emails about a surprise family vacation to the Bahamas my parents had funded just 3 months ago while I was organizing a community fundraiser to help with Michael's palliative care costs. The final blow was an email from just 2 weeks earlier. Rachel writing, "Thanks again for covering the kids' summer programs this year. I know it's a lot, but they get so much out of these experiences. Sophia's tennis coach thinks she could go pro with the right training. That reminds me, could you increase the monthly support to $3,000? Bradley's bonus was less than expected this quarter, and we're a little stretched with the country club dues increasing." My father's response, "Of course, sweetie. Anything for our grandchildren. We'll start the new amount next month." Anything for their grandchildren. Except, apparently, ensuring their grandfather lived to see them grow up. The next evening, I asked my friend Diane to sit with Michael while I went to my parents' house. I didn't call ahead. I couldn't risk them preparing excuses or evasions. When my mother opened the door, her surprise quickly shifted to concern. "Leah, is everything okay? Is Michael?" "Michael is the same," I said, stepping inside. "I need to speak with both of you. Now." My father emerged from his study, reading glasses perched on his nose. "What's going on?" "Let's sit down," I suggested, my calm voice belying the storm inside me. In their living room, surrounded by family photos, including several frames displaying Rachel's children in various activities, I took out my phone and pulled up the spreadsheet photos. Yesterday, while fixing Dad's computer, I found these financial records. I handed my phone to my father. "I'd like an explanation." The color drained from his face as he looked at the screen. My mother leaned over to see, then quickly looked away. The silence stretched uncomfortably. "These are private financial records," my father finally said, his voice tight. "Yes, they are. Records showing you've given Rachel over $1.2 million in the past 5 years, while telling me you couldn't help save your son-in-law's life because you don't have that kind of money available." My voice cracked on the final words. It's not that simple, Leah, my mother began. Then explain it to me, I interrupted. Explain how you can give Rachel $250,000 a year but couldn't help with Michael's treatments. Explain how private school tuition and tennis camps are more important than keeping Michael alive. My father set the phone down and removed his glasses, pinching the bridge of his nose. Rachel needs the help more than you do. She has 3 children to support, and I have a dying husband, I shouted, my composure finally breaking. A husband who might have had a fighting chance if you'd helped with his treatments from the beginning. That's not fair, my mother protested. Michael's cancer was already advanced when he was diagnosed, and it's not our fault he got sick. What is that supposed to mean? My father sighed heavily. Michael smoked in college. You told us that yourself. These lifestyle choices have consequences. I stared at him in disbelief. He quit 15 years ago. His doctors said it might have contributed to his cancer but was unlikely to be the sole cause. And even if it was, so what? He doesn't deserve treatment because of mistakes he made in his early 20s? That's not what we're saying, my mother interjected. We just had to make choices about where our money would do the most good. Rachel's children have their whole lives ahead of them. Their education will shape their futures. The implication hung in the air. Michael didn't have a future worth investing in. So you decided Michael's life was worth less than private school and summer camps. The words felt like acid in my mouth. We never said that, my mother exclaimed. You didn't have to say it. Your actions made it perfectly clear. I stood up, unable to stay seated any longer. All those times I came to you, showing you his treatment plans, the promising results from the immunotherapy, the doctor saying he could have years more with the right care, you nodded and expressed sympathy, while knowing you were spending hundreds of thousands on Rachel's family for things that weren't necessities. Rachel needed our help to maintain stability for the children after Bradley's setback, my father explained defensively. The children were established in their school, their activities. Uprooting them would have been traumatic, and watching their uncle die while their grandparents withheld help isn't traumatic, I countered. My mother began to cry. You don't understand. Rachel's children have such potential. Sophia might go pro in tennis with the right coaching. Samuel is showing real promise in mathematics. Ethan, stop, I held up my hand. Just stop. Do you hear yourself? You're justifying letting Michael suffer because my sister's children have potential? What about Michael's potential? What about the hundreds of children he's taught over his career? What about our potential children that now will never exist? An uncomfortable silence filled the room. Let's be honest, I continued, my voice dangerously quiet. This isn't about potential or stability or any other excuse. You simply love Rachel more than you love me. You value her family above mine. You always have. That's not true, my mother protested. Isn't it? Look at these numbers, I pointed to my phone. Numbers don't lie. $250,000 versus $5,000 in the same year. Actions speak louder than words, and your actions have been screaming for decades. My father stood, his face flushed with anger or shame, perhaps both. You've always been so self-sufficient, Leah. You never seem to need our help. Rachel is different. She requires more support. I never needed help because I never received it. I became self-sufficient out of necessity, not preference. And when I finally did ask for help when it was literally life or death, you turned me away while continuing to fund Rachel's lavish lifestyle. We gave what we could, my father insisted. No, I corrected him. You gave what you were willing to. There's a difference. If you're feeling the anger rising inside you like I was in that moment, hit that subscribe button and join our community where we support each other through family betrayals like this one. As the confrontation continued to escalate, I realized some truths can't be unsaid. My father's expression hardened. I don't appreciate your tone or these accusations. What we do with our money is our business. It became my business when you let me believe you couldn't help while watching me sell our home, cash out retirement accounts, and work myself to exhaustion trying to save my husband's life. Tears stream down my face now. Do you have any idea what that's been like? To know treatment exists that could help him but be unable to afford it? To watch him suffer knowing it didn't have to be this bad? We never intended, my mother began. What you intended doesn't matter, I shouted. What matters is what you did, or didn't do. Michael is dying, and you chose sailing camp over helping him live. My father's face reddened. That's enough, Leah. You need to calm down and stop making ridiculous comparisons. Ridiculous? Is that what you think this is? Let me tell you what's ridiculous. What's ridiculous is that you'll spend $35,000 on private school tuition, but not on treatment that could extend your son-in-law's life. What's ridiculous is that you've been lying to my face for years. What's ridiculous is that I ever believed you when you said you loved Michael like a son. I grabbed my phone and headed for the door. Where are you going? My mother called after me, voice frantic. We need to discuss this rationally. I turned back one last time. There's nothing rational to discuss. You made your choices. You valued sailing camp and tennis lessons over Michael's life. Now I'm making mine. Don't call me. Don't visit. If Michael miraculously survives this, it will be no thanks to you. My father stepped forward. Leah, you're upset. You're not thinking clearly. Family doesn't just walk away from each other. No, family supports each other when it matters most. You're not my family anymore. You're just the people who raised me and then left me when I needed you most. I drove home in tears, hands shaking so badly I had to pull over twice to compose myself. The weight of the confrontation, the finality of my words, the destruction of my lifelong perception of my parents. It was overwhelming. But beneath the pain was something else. Clarity. For the first time, I saw my family dynamic with perfect clarity, unobscured by excuses or rationalizations. When I arrived home, Michael was awake, concerned by my red eyes and tear-stained face. Despite his weakness, he pulled me close as I collapsed beside him on our bed. They've been giving Rachel over $250,000 a year, I whispered. All this time, they could have helped. They chose not to. To my surprise, Michael didn't seem shocked. I suspected something like this, he admitted softly. The new cars, the vacations, the private schools, while they claimed financial limitations, it didn't add up. Why didn't you say anything? What good would it have done? Either they would have helped us, or they wouldn't. Finding out they could have helped but chose not to would only have added bitterness to an already difficult situation. Even facing death, he was protecting me from pain. The injustice of it all hit me anew, and fresh tears flowed. I told them I'm done with them, I said. I can't forgive this, Michael. I just can't. He stroked my hair gently. Forgiveness isn't something you owe anyone, especially not now. But remember, hatred consumes the vessel that carries it. Whatever you decide, do it for your peace, not their punishment. Wise until the end. That was my Michael. The days following the confrontation were a blur of emotions and practical concerns. My parents called repeatedly, but I let their calls go to voicemail, unable to hear their voices without reliving the betrayal. Rachel texted accusatory messages. Mom and Dad are devastated. How could you speak to them that way? They've always supported both of us the best they could. I finally responded with a single text. Ask them to show you the spreadsheets tracking financial support. Then we can talk. She never replied. Michael's condition continued to decline, making the family drama seem simultaneously all-important and utterly insignificant. What mattered was maximizing whatever time we had left together, not rehashing betrayals that couldn't be undone. Yet the knowledge festered, coloring every memory of my family relationships. A week after the confrontation, a thick envelope arrived from my parents. Inside was a cashier's check for $50,000 and a letter. Dear Leah, it began, we are deeply sorry for the pain our choices have caused. While we can't undo the past, we want to help Michael now in any way possible. Please accept this money for his treatments or comfort care, whichever is most appropriate at this stage. We love you both and hope you can find it in your heart to give us an opportunity to make amends. Love, Mom and Dad. I stared at the check, emotions warring within me. Too little, too late. Yet $50,000 would cover significant palliative care improvements, making Michael's final months more comfortable. After discussing it with Michael, We decided to deposit the check. It doesn't mean you've forgiven them, he reminded me. It means you're putting my comfort above your pride or anger. That's love, Leah. I didn't respond to the letter, but I did text my mother. Check received and deposited. It will help with palliative care. Thank you. Nothing more. I couldn't bring myself to express gratitude for what felt like conscience, money, a fraction of what they'd given Rachel's family for non-essentials. With the money, we arranged for additional in-home nursing care, allowing me to sleep more than a few hours at a stretch for the first time in months. We also consulted with a pain management specialist who adjusted Michael's medication regimen, significantly improving his quality of life in those precious final weeks. My parents attempted to visit twice, but I asked them to respect my boundaries. Michael needs peace and calm right now, I told my mother by text. Your presence would only create tension he doesn't need. Rachel's reaction evolved as the situation unfolded. Initial defensiveness gave way to uncomfortable recognition when she finally convinced our parents to show her the financial records. She called me, her voice small and uncertain. Leah, I had no idea the disparity was so extreme. I knew they helped with tuition and some activities, but I never realized how much they were giving us while refusing to help with Michael's treatments. I'm so sorry. Did you know we sold our house? That I've been working in whatever spare hours I can find between caregiving shifts? I asked. Not the full extent, no, she admitted. You always seem to have everything under control. I guess I saw what I wanted to see. That's the problem with our family, isn't it? Everyone sees what they want to see, not what's actually happening. There was a long pause before she responded. The kids have been asking about Uncle Michael. Would it be okay if we visited this weekend? No parents, just us. I consulted Michael, who immediately brightened at the prospect of seeing his niece and nephews. Despite everything, he genuinely loved those children and had missed them. The visit was actually healing in ways I hadn't anticipated. The children brought homemade cards and small gifts they'd purchased with their own allowance money. They sat patiently beside Michael as he showed them magic tricks he could still manage with his limited energy. Rachel seemed truly shaken by Michael's appearance, the weight loss, the yellowed skin, the weakness evident in his every movement. As the children played in the small living room of our apartment, Rachel pulled me aside. I'm stopping the monthly support payments from Mom and Dad, she whispered. I had no idea they were giving us money they could have used to help Michael. Bradley and I can manage without it. It was a small gesture of solidarity, but it meant something. Too late for Michael, but it acknowledged the injustice. My closest friends became my lifeline during this period. Diane organized a rotating schedule of friends to provide meals and company. My colleague James arranged for me to continue some research work remotely, providing both mental distraction and much-needed income. My therapy sessions, which I'd begun shortly after Michael's diagnosis, became focused on processing the family betrayal, alongside the anticipated grief of losing my husband. You're experiencing compound trauma, my therapist explained. The expected loss of your husband, coupled with the unexpected loss of trust in your family of origin. It's an extraordinary burden. With her guidance, I began journaling extensively, pouring my rage, grief, and confusion onto pages that no one else would read. The raw honesty of those entries provided relief when nothing else could. 6 weeks after the confrontation, my mother left a tearful voicemail that shifted something in me. Leah, your father had a minor heart attack yesterday. He's stable now and should make a full recovery, but it's been a wake-up call for both of us. Life is so fragile, so precious. I know we've made terrible mistakes, and we may never earn your forgiveness. But please, if anything happens with Michael, let us know. We don't deserve it, but we do love him. I shared the message with Michael, who took my hand in his increasingly frail one. Forgiveness isn't about deserving, Leah. It's about releasing yourself from the burden of hatred. Your parents made unconscionable choices, but holding on to that anger only hurts you. I'm not ready, I admitted. Maybe someday, but not now. He nodded, understanding. That's fair. Just don't close the door entirely. Time has a way of changing perspectives. As always, his wisdom provided a beacon through the darkness. I texted my mother, "I'm sorry about Dad. I hope he recovers quickly. I'm not ready for reconciliation, but I'll let you know about any significant changes with Michael." It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a tiny crack in the wall I'd built. A reminder that, despite everything, I didn't want to become someone defined solely by bitterness and resentment. As summer transitioned to fall, Michael's decline accelerated. The cancer had spread extensively, and his oncologist confirmed what we already knew. We were measuring remaining time in weeks, not months. We made the decision to focus exclusively on comfort care, enrolling in a hospice program that provided additional support at home. Michael approached his final days with characteristic grace and thoughtfulness. When he had energy, he wrote letters to friends, colleagues, and former students. He recorded video messages for me to watch on future anniversaries and birthdays. He organized his personal belongings, deciding who should receive his cherished books, his grandfather's pocket watch, the collection of minerals he'd gathered since childhood. "Promise me you won't let this experience close your heart," he said during a lucid evening. "The bitterness with your family, the anger about the unfairness of it all, it's justified, but don't let it define your future." "How can I not be bitter?" I asked. "We should have had decades more together." He squeezed my hand weakly. "Because bitterness doesn't honor what we had. Love does. And Leah, we had so much love." 3 weeks before he died, my parents made a final attempt at reconciliation. They sent a formal legal document transferring $250,000 to us, matching exactly what they'd given Rachel the previous year. The accompanying letter explained they'd taken out a home equity loan to make this possible. "We know this doesn't undo our past choices," they wrote, "but we want to do whatever we can to make Michael's final days comfortable and to help secure your future afterward. No strings attached." Michael and I discussed the offer at length. The money wouldn't extend his life at this stage, but it would eliminate the medical debt that had been keeping me awake at night and provide financial stability as I navigated life after his death. "Take it," Michael advised. "Not for them, but for you. For the life you'll need to build afterward." I accepted the money with a brief, formal thank you note. I also permitted them to visit Michael once, a 2-hour visit that was awkward, but gave them a chance to say goodbye. Michael, somehow, found strength to be gracious even then. "Thank you for raising such an incredible daughter," he told them. "Leah has been my rock through all of this. You should be very proud of her strength and compassion." His words brought tears to their eyes, highlighting through contrast their failure to support their daughter's husband when it mattered most. Rachel visited more frequently in those final weeks, sometimes with the children, sometimes alone. During one visit, she confided that our parents had been lending her money from our grandparents' trust funds that were supposed to be divided equally between us upon our parents' deaths. "I had no idea it was coming from the trust," she insisted. "They just said they were helping out with the kids' education. Bradley and I would never have accepted it if we'd known it was coming from your inheritance too." This revelation added another layer of betrayal, but I was too emotionally exhausted to process it fully. I filed the information away to address after Michael was gone. In Michael's final week, he drifted in and out of consciousness, but there were still moments of clarity. During one such moment, he asked me to bring him a small box from his desk drawer. Inside was a letter. "Read this after I'm gone," he instructed. "Not before." 3 days later, with me holding his hand and softly singing our wedding song, Michael took his last breath. The pain of that moment defies description, as if the universe itself had collapsed, leaving nothing but an endless void. Yet even in that shattering grief, I felt a strange sense of relief that his suffering had ended. The funeral was small, but well attended. My parents sat in the back row, respecting my wish for distance. Rachel and her children sat closer, the kids clutching drawings they'd made for Uncle Michael. Most attendees were colleagues, friends, and former students whose lives Michael had touched. Their stories and memories painted a picture of a man who had lived with purpose and kindness, who had made a difference in countless lives. After the service, as people gathered at our apartment, I finally opened Michael's letter. "My beloved Leah," it began, "if you're reading this, I've moved on from this life, but my love for you remains eternal. You've been my greatest joy, my partner in all things, and watching you fight so fiercely for me through this illness has only deepened my admiration for your strength and character. I have one final request. Don't let resentment poison your future. Your parents failed. You failed us in ways that are difficult to forgive. But forgiveness isn't about exonerating them. It's about freeing yourself. Set conditions, establish boundaries, but don't close the door permanently on healing. Remember that family isn't always defined by blood. Look around at our friends who've supported us, who've loved us through this journey. They're your family too, and they'll be there for you when I cannot. Finally, please don't shield yourself from loving again someday. Your capacity for love is too beautiful to waste. Know that my blessing goes with you into whatever future you create. Forever yours, Michael. His words broke me open and began the true process of grief, not just for his death, but for all we'd lost along the way. The years we should have had, the children we'd planned to raise, the lifetime of memories we'd expected to build together. Yet amid that grief was Michael's final gift, permission to heal, to forgive, to move forward. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in my jewelry box beside my wedding ring. Then I rejoined our friends, our chosen family, who had gathered to celebrate Michael's life and support me in its aftermath. 2 months after Michael's funeral, when the initial fog of grief had lifted enough for practical concerns to resurface, I contacted a lawyer about Rachel's revelation regarding our grandparents' trust. Karen Spencer, an estate attorney recommended by a colleague, agreed to review the situation. Bring any documentation you have about the trust, she advised, and any evidence of misappropriation, if you believe that occurred. I had little direct evidence, just Rachel's statement and my own observations over the years. However, Karen suggested we start by requesting the trust documents from the family attorney who had managed our grandparents' estate. I was listed as a beneficiary and entitled to this information. Walter Green, my grandparents' longtime attorney, seemed uncomfortable when I called, but agreed to provide copies of the trust documents. When they arrived, Karen and I spent hours reviewing the complex legal language. This is very clear, Karen eventually concluded. Your grandparents established a trust with your parents as trustees. The principle was to remain untouched until your parents' deaths, at which point it would be divided equally between you and your sister. However, your parents were permitted to distribute income from the trust investments to either of you in cases of emergency or significant need, provided such distributions were approximately equal over time. And were they equal? I asked, already knowing the answer. Karen shook her head. Not remotely. According to these annual reports, your sister has received distributions totaling approximately $650,000 over the past 6 years. You've received $15,000. I felt sick. That's part of the money that could have gone to Michael's treatments. Very likely, Karen agreed. And it's a clear violation of their fiduciary duty as trustees. Your grandparents intended this money to benefit both their grandchildren equally. Armed with this information, I requested a meeting with my parents and Rachel. I chose neutral ground, a private room at Karen's law office, and asked that they not bring their own lawyer initially, as I wanted an honest conversation, not immediate legal confrontation. They arrived looking apprehensive. My mother embraced me tentatively, which I allowed but didn't return with much warmth. My father seemed to have aged years in the months since I'd seen him last. Thank you for coming, I began formally. I've asked you here because I've recently reviewed Grandma and Grandpa Martin's trust documents. The color drained from my father's face. My mother clutched her purse more tightly. I know that you've distributed approximately $650,000 from the trust to Rachel over the past 6 years, while giving me only $15,000. I know that this violates the terms of the trust, which required distributions to be approximately equal. Leah, we can explain, my father started. I'm sure you can, I interrupted. But first, I want to make something clear. This isn't about money. This is about fairness, about honesty, and about the fact that funds that should have been available for Michael's treatment were redirected without my knowledge. Rachel spoke up, her voice trembling. I had no idea the money was coming from the trust, Leah. They told me it was their money, that they were choosing to help with the kids' education. I believe you, I said. This isn't your fault, Rachel. It's about decisions our parents made as trustees. I turned back to my parents. I've consulted with an attorney. She advises that I have grounds to have you removed as trustees and to recover the difference between what was distributed to Rachel versus what was distributed to me. My mother began to cry quietly. My father looked defeated. However, I continued, I'm not interested in a protracted legal battle that would only cause more pain for everyone. I'm proposing an alternative solution. I outlined my proposal. My parents would resign as trustees, appointing a neutral third-party trustee. They would acknowledge in writing the unequal distributions and agree to a rebalancing that would provide me with equal distributions, either from the trust itself or from their personal funds, over a 5-year period. Additionally, they would provide a full accounting of all trust activities since they became trustees. This approach allows you to make things right without court involvement, I explained. It also acknowledges that you may not have liquid assets to immediately correct the imbalance. My father nodded slowly. That's more generous than we deserve. We'll agree to your terms. Why? I asked, needing to hear them say it. Why did you do this? My mother wiped her tears. Rachel always seemed to need more help. The children had opportunities we didn't want them to miss. We told ourselves we were borrowing from the trust temporarily, that we'd equalize things eventually. And when Michael got sick, when I specifically asked for help with life-saving treatments, my father looked down at his hands. We'd already distributed so much to Rachel. We were afraid if we suddenly started giving you large sums, you'd ask questions about the trust. We convinced ourselves the experimental treatments might not work anyway, that it might be throwing good money after bad. The casual cruelty of that calculation weighing my husband's life against their desire to avoid accountability stunned me into momentary silence. I don't know if I can ever fully forgive this, I finally said. But for my own peace, I'm willing to move forward with this arrangement, rather than pursuing legal action. The meeting concluded with agreements in principle. Over the following weeks, the formal legal work was completed. My parents resigned as trustees, replaced by a professional fiduciary service. The acknowledgement of unequal distributions was documented, and a schedule for rebalancing was established. During this process, I learned that my parents had indeed borrowed against their house to provide the $250,000 they'd given us before Michael died. This didn't excuse their earlier choices, but it did suggest genuine remorse and a desire to make amends, however belatedly. Uncle Robert, my father's brother, called after hearing about the situation. I'm not surprised, he admitted. Thomas has always favored Rachel, ever since you were children. I confronted him about it years ago, but he denied any preferential treatment. Conversations with other family members revealed that the favoritism had been apparent to everyone except me, or rather, I'd seen it but had normalized it, making excuses and adjustments rather than challenging the fundamental unfairness. As the legal matters concluded, I faced the decision of what to do with the restitution funds. Using money that could have saved Michael to benefit myself felt wrong somehow, tainted. After much reflection, I decided to establish a foundation in Michael's name, an organization dedicated to helping cancer patients access experimental treatments not covered by insurance. The first disbursement from my parents funded the initial endowment. It wouldn't bring Michael back, but it might prevent other families from facing the same impossible choices we had. The first anniversary of Michael's death arrived with the changing leaves of autumn. I spent the day alone at his favorite hiking spot, reading again the letter he'd left me, allowing myself to fully feel the grief that sometimes still ambushed me in quiet moments. The year had brought unexpected developments. The Michael Williams Memorial Foundation had helped 12 families access experimental treatments for rare cancers, 3 of which had shown promising results. The foundation's work had been featured in local news and had attracted additional donors, expanding its reach beyond what I'd initially imagined possible. My relationship with my parents remained complicated. We communicated primarily through emails and occasional phone calls, focusing mostly on practical matters related to the trust and foundation. I declined their invitations for holidays and family gatherings, not yet ready for that level of reconciliation. But the raw anger had subsided, replaced by a sad acceptance of who they were and the choices they'd made. Rachel and I had developed a closer relationship than we'd had since childhood. After the trust issues came to light, she'd done significant reflection on her role in the family dynamic and had made genuine efforts to establish a more balanced relationship. Her children still called me Aunt Leah, and I'd begun spending time with them regularly, maintaining the connection that had been so important to Michael. Professionally, I'd returned to full-time research, finding solace in the structured environment of the laboratory. My colleagues had been unfailingly supportive, providing both the space to grieve and the encouragement to re-engage with work that had once been deeply fulfilling. Gradually, I found myself becoming absorbed in research problems again, experiencing moments of intellectual curiosity and satisfaction that had seemed impossible in the dark days after Michael's death. 6 months after the trust resolution, my parents made an unexpected request. They asked to volunteer with the foundation, offering my father's accounting skills and my mother's event planning experience. After careful consideration and consultation with the foundation's board, I agreed to a probationary arrangement. Their work for the foundation couldn't erase the past, but it provided a channel for their evident desire to make amends. Michael would approve, Rachel told me during a quiet dinner at my apartment. He always said actions speak louder than words. He did say that, I acknowledged. He also said forgiveness isn't about the other person deserving it, it's about freeing yourself. The most unexpected development came through the foundation. In reviewing applications for assistance, I connected with Sophia Mercer, whose husband James was battling the same rare cancer that had taken Michael. Their case was remarkably similar to ours. A promising experimental treatment existed, but wasn't covered by insurance. The foundation provided funding for the treatment, which showed immediate positive results. As James improved, Sophia and I developed a friendship based on shared experience. She understood the fear, the desperate hope, the exhaustion of caregiving in a way few others could. When James went into remission 6 months later, their gratitude was overwhelming. "You saved my life," James told me during a foundation fundraiser. "Not just through the treatment, but through giving Sophia a lifeline when she was drowning." "I just did what I wished someone had done for us," I replied. The holiday season approached, bringing with it the inevitable question of family gatherings. After much consideration, I accepted my parents' invitation for Christmas dinner, the first family event I'd attended since before Michael's death. I set clear boundaries about what topics were off-limits and limited the visit to a few hours. The gathering was awkward at times, but not as painful as I'd feared. Rachel's children proudly showed me their school projects and sports trophies. My father was notably subdued, my mother overly solicitous. But beneath the awkwardness was a tentative foundation for a new type of relationship, one based on reality rather than illusion, on boundaries rather than blind acceptance. As we finished dessert, my mother tentatively raised a toast. "To family," she began, "and to Michael, who remains in our hearts." I lifted my glass but added quietly, "and to truth and accountability, without which family is just a word." My father nodded solemnly, acknowledging the gentle rebuke. Later, as I prepared to leave, he handed me a small package. "This isn't a Christmas gift," he explained. "It's something we should have given you long ago." Inside was my grandmother's sapphire ring, which I'd always admired as a child. "She wanted you to have this," my father said. "It was specified in her will, but we kept it." It was wrong. I slipped the ring onto my finger, noting how perfectly it fit. Another small piece of restitution. Another acknowledgement of past wrongs. "Thank you," I said simply. Driving home that night, I reflected on Michael's final letter, on his urging not to let bitterness define my future. The path to forgiveness wasn't linear. It curved and doubled back on itself, some days feeling impossible and others feeling essential to my own healing. But slowly, intentionally, I was finding a way forward that honored both the injustice of what had happened and the necessity of moving beyond it. In my apartment, I lit a candle beside Michael's photograph. "I'm trying," I whispered. "I'm building something meaningful from all this pain, just like you would have wanted." The foundation continued to grow. My research led to a promising new diagnostic tool for early cancer detection. My relationship with my family evolved into something more honest, if less intimate than before. And gradually, I began to envision a future that, while different from the one Michael and I had planned together, might still hold purpose and even joy. I often wonder if things would have been different had we discovered the financial disparities earlier, had we confronted my parents when Michael's treatments first began. Could his life have been extended or even saved? This painful question has no answer, but it has strengthened my resolve to ensure the foundation helps other families avoid similar regrets. Family is complicated. Love is imperfect. Justice is rarely complete. These truths used to feel like bitter disappointments. Now they feel like the beginning of wisdom. Michael taught me that in his life and in his death, that acknowledging these complexities doesn't diminish us, but rather connects us more authentically to the messy, beautiful reality of human experience. As this chapter of my story comes to a close, I'm curious if any of you have experienced similar family betrayals or had to navigate the complex terrain of forgiveness after deep hurt. Your comments would mean so much to me as I continue this journey. Please like this video if Michael's story touched you, subscribe if you'd like to follow my ongoing work with the foundation, and share with anyone who might need to hear that even after devastating loss, rebuilding is possible. Thank you for witnessing my story, for holding space for both my grief and my gradual healing. Until next time, remember that family isn't just about blood, it's about who stands by you when it truly matters.